If one thing is certain about 2018's God of War, the 8th installment in the God of War series, it's the fact that its main protagonist Kratos is a deeply scarred and haunted man. In a life long since abandoned, he was known as the Ghost of Sparta, a title he would eventually come to loathe. Kratos served as a captain of the Great Spartan Army. Bloodthirsty and extremely skilled, Kratos led his men to countless victories until he was defeated at the hands of a barbarian king. Facing death, Kratos called upon the Greek god of war Ares to spare his men and give them the power to defeat the enemy in return for his servitude. Kratos, after being given the Blades of Chaos, decapitates the barbarian king and wages war at Ares' behest, eventually attacking a small village occupied by worshippers of Athena. As Kratos tears through the village, he eventually comes upon a temple and in his blind rage slaughters every single person inside, women and children alike. Unbeknownst to him, Ares had secretly transported Kratos' wife and daughter into this temple, believing that with them gone, Kratos could be sculpted into the perfect warrior. This, however, proves to be a huge, bumbling, idiotic mistake. Kratos, engulfed in grief and sadness, resolves to avenge his fallen family and renounces his servitude, swearing to kill Ares. The Oracle of the destroyed village curses Kratos by bonding the ashes of his dead family to his skin, thus turning him a ghostly shade of white. What follows is essentially a total and absolute bloodbath. In his pursuit to defeat Ares, Kratos slaughters every single person and god who stands in his way, innocent or depraved. Following the defeat of Ares and Kratos taking up the mantle of God of War is a 7-game series detailing the fallout of this outcome and the adventures that got Kratos to this point, so prequels and sequels. However, throughout the entire series and even up to 2022's God of War Ragnarok, one common thread is observed. Kratos is haunted by the ghosts of his past mistakes, literally and figuratively. Whether it be his constant internal conflict over his monstrous past or the literal ethereal incarnation of Athena revealing herself to him in 2018's God of War, Kratos is incapable of ignoring, or should I say, escaping the ghosts that haunt him. Ghosts don't have to come from such direct and traumatic means, however. Some haunted individuals' personal poltergeist may be thrust upon them by the expectations and restraints society sets upon their shoulders. This kind of problem is observed throughout Maxine Hong Kingston's book, The Woman Warrior, in which Kingston reflects on her earlier years as a Chinese-American woman, interweaving Chinese myth and folklore throughout. One common thread stands out, however. Why so much talk about ghosts? I mean, this is a memoir based on real-life experiences. Sure, maybe the myth and folklore aspect could introduce some elements of ghostly happenings, but seriously, ghosts are mentioned everywhere throughout the book, from the very first chapter to the final pages. Kingston's mother, for example, refers to white people around them as ghosts. Her mother's sister, Moon Orchid, after taking a steep decline in mental health, begins to have delusions of Mexican ghosts haunting her. And Kingston herself is referred to as, I'm gonna let Google Translate say this for me, because I don't want to butcher this, but she's called that by her mother. And while she isn't totally sure what this phrase means, she is fairly certain it means something like good foundation ghost, or someone who is blessed with all the advantages of being born in a place like America. You see, Kingston's mother, Brave Orchid, is a Chinese immigrant. She is a woman who had to work incredibly hard in order to provide a better life for herself, her child, and her family, especially at a time like the early 1900s, something Kingston is constantly reminded of throughout her life. Brave Orchid continuously pressures her daughter to work harder, get better grades, and meet the same expectations she overcame in order to get to where she is today in America. The constant pressure of such expectations follows Kingston around like a stray dog, gnawing at her psyche, creating insecurities, and fostering anxieties. This, compounded by the unrealistic and unfair expectations for women in society, American and Chinese, produce a constant inner turmoil that Kingston must face and eventually overcome over the course of her life. These unrealistic expectations are represented in the chapter White Tigers, in which Kingston details her childhood fantasy of living the life of the widely known Chinese folklore character Fa Mulan. While the first section mainly centers around Kingston's own interpretation of herself living as Fa Mulan, the second section contrasts her life in America with her fantasy. Kingston writes about how Chinese immigrants continued to treat women as worthless even after moving to America. Sayings such as better to raise geese than girls were still commonplace and ingrained into the societal norms at the time. Because of this dismissal of women, Kingston argues that if she could not even stand up to a racist boss or businessman, how could she possibly save the people of China? The expectations set before her by her family and society at large expect so much and yet give little to no concessions. Women are expected to be strong, steadfast, carriers of life, yet society chooses to harass, discount, and mistreat them instead. In spite of this, Kingston learns that her words could be used as weapons instead, and that she can use them to unite her people behind her. At the end of The Woman Warrior, it is made clear that Kingston has attained a level of maturity that can only come with age. She looks back on her early and middle years from a critical lens, allowing her to finally let go of the ghosts that haunt her. The expectations, the role society wants her to fill, the stories, all of it, while still affecting her, does not control her any longer. Similarly, our furious friend Kratos is finally coming to realize the same thing back in the Nine Realms, the setting for 2018 and 2022's God of War games. Kratos, after destroying the entire Greek pantheon of gods and truly succumbing to his hate and anger, has spent the last few thousand years looking for a new home. A good place to get away and settle down. Eventually, he lands in Midgard, the Norse realm of men, and has a child, Atreus, with a giantess named Faye. Though Faye unfortunately dies before the events of the game by natural causes. Throughout the games, we observe Kratos and Atreus fight their way through many of the Nine Realms on various quests, several times culminating in Kratos being forced to deal with his past head-on. Remember the Ghost of Athena thing I mentioned earlier? The reason for such an appearance is more than just an Easter egg of the old games. It is a literal physical presentation of Kratos' internal conflict in having to use the Blades of Chaos again. The blades represent everything he hates about himself and what he has lost, so having to pick them back up in order to achieve his new goals is a huge step in moving on, and leaving his ghost behind. But no matter how much explaining I do, nothing can illustrate the weight and emotion of the situation as well as Christopher Judge himself does in his performance, so here's that clip for you.
There's nowhere you can hide, Spartan. Put as much distance between you and the truth as you want. It changes nothing. Pretend to be everything you are not. Teacher, husband, father. But there is one unavoidable truth you will never escape. You cannot change. You will always be a monster.
I know. But I am your monster no longer.
While this is not the last time he confronts his traumas, it is perhaps the most impactful. Over the course of the rest of God of War 2018, and by the end of God of War Ragnarok, Kratos finally emerges fully ready to let go and move on from his past, allowing his ghost to finally be set free. All of this is to say, Maxine Hong Kingston is a haunted woman. Haunted by the expectations of her mother and the unrealistic expectations of society she is subjected to. And similar to our friend Kratos, the Pantheon decimating, Chaos Blade wielding, God of War, she too comes to terms with her ghosts. Not by forcing their removal or by running away from them, but by learning from them and allowing them to rest in the past, where they belong. By the end of their respective journeys, one bathed in blood, gore, and mass deicide, the other chronicling the life of a young Chinese-American woman, both individuals come to understand that while turmoil may still remain, there is an understanding that comes with it. An understanding that it is not your ghosts that haunt you, it is yourself that clings to them, never allowing them to be set free. Let's go.